Marcus, a hard-working janitor at a busy hospital in Atlanta. He's the kind of guy who keeps his head down and does his job, no complaints. But one day, he overhears something that turns his world upside down. What happens next? It's a story about family, courage, and fighting for what's right. Stay tuned to find out. Before we get into it, we'd love to know, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below so we can bring you more stories that hit home for you. Oh, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It keeps you in the loop for all our upcoming stories. Ready? Let's dive into the story. It was a rainy Tuesday evening in Atlanta, and the hospital was buzzing with noise, phones ringing, doctors shouting orders, and patients waiting in crowded hallways. Marcus Jackson, a janitor in his late 30s, pushed his cleaning cart through the chaos. He wore a faded blue uniform, his hands rough from years of hard work. Marcus wasn't the type to draw attention. He mopped floors, emptied trash cans, and kept the place running. But tonight, something was about to change. Marcus was cleaning near the billing office when he heard voices through the thin door. One was loud and sharp. Dr. Richard Hayes, a big-shot surgeon everyone knew. The other voice was softer, nervous, a woman Marcus couldn't place. He didn't mean to listen, but Dr. Hayes's words stopped him cold. "Look at this one," Dr. Hayes said, laughing. "Another deadbeat who can't pay. Thinks she can just cry her way into free treatment. Cancer's her problem, not mine." Marcus tightened his grip on the mop. He hated how some doctors talked about patients, like they were numbers, not people. The woman mumbled something about payment plans, but Dr. Hayes cut her off. "Save it," he snapped. "If she can't pay, she's out. We're not a charity." Marcus shook his head and started to move away. He had work to do, and eavesdropping wasn't his style. But then the woman said a name that made his heart skip. "Please, Dr. Hayes, it's for Tanya Jackson. She's only 32. She's got a kid." Tanya Jackson. Marcus froze. That was his little sister, his Tanya. The one fighting breast cancer for over a year. The one who texted him just yesterday about her son, Jaden, winning a spelling bee. Marcus's legs felt weak. He leaned against the wall, his mind racing. Tanya was here? In this hospital? And Dr. Hayes was mocking her? He peeked through the small window in the door. There was Dr. Hayes, tall and smug, flipping through papers. And the woman, a billing clerk, looked scared, holding a file with Tanya's name on it. Marcus stepped back, his chest tight. He had to find her. The hospital was big, but Marcus knew every corner. He ditched his cart and hurried to the oncology wing, where Tanya got her treatments. Sure enough, there she was, sitting in a cramped room, hooked to an IV, her face pale and tired. Her short hair was hidden under a scarf, and her hands fidgeted in her lap. She didn't see him yet. "Tanya," Marcus said softly, stepping inside. She looked up, surprised. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" "I work here, remember?" He forced a smile, sitting beside her. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming in today?" She sighed. "Didn't want to bother you. It's just a checkup. But they're saying my insurance won't cover the next round of chemo. I don't know what to do." Marcus clenched his fists. "How much?" "Thousands," she whispered. "More than I've got. They're talking about kicking me out if I can't pay by Friday." Friday. 3 days away. Marcus felt anger bubbling up. He thought of Dr. Hayes laughing, calling her a deadbeat. Tanya wasn't a deadbeat. She was a single mom who worked 2 jobs until the cancer got too bad. She deserved better than this. "Don't worry," Marcus said, his voice firm. "I'll figure something out." That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. He sat in his tiny apartment, staring at bills piled on the table. He didn't have thousands to give Tanya. He barely made enough to cover his own rent, but he couldn't let her down. Then he remembered something. A rumor he'd heard from another janitor. Something about the hospital overcharging patients, pocketing the extra cash. Could that be happening to Tanya? The next day, Marcus went back to work with a plan. He wasn't a detective, but he knew the hospital better than anyone. While cleaning the billing office, empty during lunch, he slipped inside and scanned the desks. Files were everywhere, messy and unmarked. He found one with Tanya's name and flipped it open. Numbers didn't make sense. Charges for tests she never had. Drugs she didn't take. His hands shook as he took pictures with his phone. But then he heard footsteps. He shoved the file back and grabbed his mop just as Dr. Hayes walked in. "What are you doing here?" Dr. Hayes barked, eyeing him. "Cleaning?" Marcus said, keeping his voice steady. "Spilled coffee on the floor." Dr. Hayes glared but didn't push it. Marcus left, his heart pounding. He had proof now. Proof the hospital was scamming Tanya and maybe others. But what could he do? He wasn't a lawyer or a whistleblower. He was just a janitor. That afternoon, he showed the photos to his friend Jamal, a nurse who'd worked there for years. Jamal's eyes widened. "Man, this is big. They're billing for stuff that never happened. I've seen it before. Patients complain, but no one listens." "What do I do?" Marcus asked. "Tanya's out of time." Jamal hesitated. "You could go to the news, or the state health board. But if they trace it back to you, you're fired, or worse." Marcus knew the risk. He could lose his job, his apartment, everything. But then he thought of Tanya sitting in that hospital bed, and Jaden who needed his mom. He had to try. The next morning, Thursday, he made copies of the photos and sent them to a local news station, anonymous, with a note, "Check Atlanta General Hospital's billing. People are suffering." Then he waited. By evening it was everywhere. The TV in the hospital break room blared. "Breaking news. Allegations of fraud at Atlanta General. Patients overcharged for fake treatments." Nurses whispered. Doctors looked nervous. Marcus kept his head down, mopping like nothing was wrong. Friday came. Tanya's deadline. Marcus was sweeping the hall when Dr. Hayes stormed up, face red. "You!" he shouted. "I know it was you. You think you can ruin me?" Marcus stayed calm. "I don't know what you're talking about." "You'll regret this," Dr. Hayes hissed, stomping off. Minutes later, security grabbed Marcus and hauled him to the manager's office. "You're done," the manager said. "Stealing files? That's a crime." "I didn't steal anything," Marcus said. "I took pictures, for my sister." The manager smirked. "Prove it in court. You're fired." Marcus walked out, head high, even as his stomach sank. He'd lost his job, and he didn't know if Tanya was safe yet. But then his phone buzzed. A text from Jamal. "News is all over it. State's investigating. Tanya's treatment's covered now." Relief hit him like a wave. He rushed to Tanya's room. She was crying, but smiling. "They just told me," she said. "No more bills. How'd this happen?" Marcus hugged her, tight. "Doesn't matter. You're okay now." Days later, the hospital was in chaos. Dr. Hayes got suspended, and the state found fraud going back years. Patients cheered Marcus in the halls, calling him a hero. He didn't feel like one. He just wanted his sister alive. And yeah, he was jobless now. But as he watched Tanya play with Jaden that weekend, he knew it was worth it. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you. Sometimes it saves everything that matters. So that was the story of Marcus, a regular guy who risked it all for his sister. What do you think? Would you have done the same? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. If this story hit you in the feels, hit that subscribe button. It's free for you, but it helps us keep bringing you stories like this. Thanks for watching, have a good day, and we'll see you in the next one.